might sound strange to us today, but there was once a time when leaning down to press your lips against the face of the dead was not unusual at all. In fact, in many cultures it was the final step in saying goodbye, a last kiss before the grave closed forever. When we think about funerals, we often imagine silence. A coffin, flowers, perhaps a hymn. But funerals in the past were not always so neatly arranged. They were deeply human affairs, messy, intimate, and full of gestures that feel unsettling to modern eyes. One of the most intimate of these gestures was the kiss of farewell. Not just a symbolic kiss blown from afar, but a literal touch of lips to skin that had already grown cold. It wasn't seen as macabre. Rather, it was considered necessary. A final affirmation of love, loyalty, or even duty. And so, across centuries and across lands, people kissed their dead. Parents kissed children, children kissed parents. Friends pressed their lips to a hand, or to a forehead, or sometimes to the mouth itself. Main narrative, the meaning of the kiss. Why would they do this? Part of the answer lies in how people once understood the boundary between life and death. Today, we often think of death as a sharp line. One moment someone is alive, the next they are gone. But in the medieval world, and in many cultures before and after, death was seen as a slower departure. The body might linger, the spirit might hover. To touch the dead was not necessarily frightening. It was a way to bridge that fading connection. The kiss was an act of closure, a way of confirming, yes, this is really goodbye. In Christian Europe, especially during the Middle Ages, kissing the dead was woven into ritual. A family might line up before the bier, each person taking a turn to lean down, to whisper something inaudible, and to kiss the face. The gesture was not only private but communal. Everyone could see who had offered their farewell. Sometimes it carried spiritual meaning. In certain traditions, kissing the corpse was thought to help commend the soul to heaven, a way of passing love, almost like a last gift, into the unknown. In Eastern Orthodox funerals, for example, mourners still often kiss the deceased, usually on the hands or the forehead. It is an acknowledgement that, although the body is still before them, the person they loved has moved on. But the kiss remains, as a token of both respect and love. If we wander back further into the Roman world, we find something curious. Romans believed that a dying person might release their last breath, their anima or soul, through the mouth. It was not unheard of for family members to lean close, even to kiss the dying, in hopes of catching that final breath. A symbolic act, yes, but one that hints at how closely lips and death were linked in the ancient imagination. Later, in early modern Europe, the practice continued. Funeral manuals, those curious little guides that taught people how to behave in times of grief, sometimes described the kiss of farewell as expected etiquette. Not to kiss might even appear cold or unloving. But, of course, death has never been just spiritual. It has always been physical too. And the physical reality of death has a way of intruding on ritual. By the 18th and 19th centuries, doctors and reformers began to worry about hygiene. To kiss a corpse, they argued, was to risk infection. And with cholera outbreaks, plagues, and other illnesses spreading swiftly through communities, the kiss of farewell began to seem less like love and more like danger. Gradually, in Western Europe and America, the practice declined. Instead of kissing the dead directly, families might place flowers or touch the coffin, or keep a lock of hair. Distance replaced intimacy, and the act, once so ordinary, came to feel strange. But imagine for a moment what it was like in a small village centuries ago. The body would not have been whisked away to a funeral home. It would have been laid out in the very house where the person lived, washed and dressed by family members. Candles might flicker in the corners. The scent of herbs, rosemary, thyme, perhaps lavender, would be scattered to soften the smell of decay. Neighbors would file in, murmuring condolences. Children would peek shyly from behind skirts. And at some point, someone would lean forward and kiss the still face. Perhaps the lips were already stiff, perhaps they were waxy and pale. But the act was tender, as if to say, "You were here and I loved you, and I will not let you go without one last touch." Even in more recent centuries, this intimacy lingered. In Victorian England, There are accounts of widows kissing their husband's cold forehead in the parlor, before the coffin lid was finally closed. The kiss was not meant for the living. It was meant for memory. Today, we tend to keep our distance from death. We use gloves, coffins, formaldehyde, and hospitals to put space between the living and the dead. The thought of kissing a corpse feels unsettling, even grotesque. But for much of history, it was the most human thing you could do. To press your lips to the dead was to acknowledge the closeness of life and death, the thin veil between them. It was not about morbidity, but about love. And so, when we read of Romans trying to catch a final breath, or of peasants kissing the foreheads of their kin, or of Orthodox Christians still leaning down for that last embrace, we are reminded that death, in its strangeness, has always been less about the body left behind, and more about the bonds that endure beyond it. A kiss for the dead may seem unusual to us, but once it was the gentlest farewell.